Andrew Zukoski, welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Hey, Gareth. Glad to be here.
Good. Looking forward to this one. For anybody that doesn't know Andrew, can you give us a quick intro of what you're doing now?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Andrew Zukoski. I'm one of the co-founders at JOIN. You can find us at join.build. We're the decision-making platform for the built environment. My background's in software engineering, and sort of super excited to be building a software solution for the pre-construction industry and serving estimators and pre-construction managers who are so impactful for the built environment.
Brilliant. Now, I know your background is software engineer, but you have kind of pivoted and specialized in the construction markets. Take us back to 2010 when you graduated from Rice University. Had you always got like a mission to improve the construction world?
No, I don't think construction was on my radar, really. I think I flirted with being an architect at some point earlier in my life, but I think almost everyone I meet at some point thought that
we all thought we were going to be architects.
Yeah, everybody thought they were the person to design that city, right? We all played SimCity, and we're like, yeah, that's like I should be in charge.
We were all going to change the skyline, 100%.
Yeah. But that was a while back. No, I got started in the 3D printing world. So it was a exciting time for that industry. I landed at a company, Bespoke Innovations, that was doing customized medical devices. So we developed a system that would. Do you remember the Microsoft Kinect, that like weird thing you'd put on top of your Xbox and dance around in front of it and play bowling or something? Yeah. So we developed a system utilizing some of that technology that would capture the shape of someone's body and then let us 3D print devices, braces, prosthetics, orthotics that uniquely matched each person's body. And that was cool. We built scoliosis braces, hand and wrist braces mostly. The company was acquired by 3D Systems, and I continued working on that project for a few years. But and what had excited me about that was we're using computers to shape something out in the world. And I mean, there it was really like a shape, right? Like it's just a piece of plastic in a very particular shape that gives it some function. But while I was at 3D Systems, a friend sent me a job posting for this company, Flux, which was a Google X spin out that was taking some of the computational design techniques and design automation techniques similar to the ones that we had learned to deploy for the 3D printed devices and applying them to buildings. And there's a fair number of customized braces out there, but there are a lot more buildings out there, and they're a lot bigger. And so I thought and it was an amazing team. And so I thought this looks interesting, and I jumped in there, and that was my sort of first foray into either architecture or construction. But for all its quirks, I fell in love with it.
How exciting was Flux? Because I mean, you're still relatively young in 2014 when you take up that director of engineering role. I mean, how exciting was it to be involved? And I take it they were a startup. Yeah,
startup. Company got started as a project inside of Google X. It was the first company to spin out of Google. I mean, it was thrilling. It was super well funded. It was doing technology for architecture and construction sort of before the most recent wave of funding. And there were pluses and minuses to that. It probably made taking what we built to market a little bit harder, but it also meant that, especially with the Google name attached to us, just every door in the world opened, and we were incredibly privileged to learn like what people's problems were and how a lot of things around the industry worked. And Nick Chim, the CEO, had this just incredibly compelling vision for how computational design could advance the industry and could advance the world, and assembled a super smart team around it. And I mean, I think one of the most important things in your like daily experience is just like who you're spending time with and who you're working with. And so that was a great group. Team's still largely in touch today. Drew and I met there. She's one of the co-founders at JOIN. Jim and I met through Flux as well. It was great. It was a great
Yeah, important step. And what were the big takeaways from it? If you could put your finger on the two or three things that you said, you know what, I learned this from Flux, and I'm definitely going to implement it at JOIN.
Yeah. So Flux didn't, at the end of the day, didn't work. And I think there were a couple of reasons for that. One was focus, and that we tried to do a lot of different things at different times. But that was one lesson. But I think the other lesson that we took away was the need to meet the industry where it is. You must have seen the McKinsey graph of productivity in construction versus other industries, right?
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy, but I think it was Darren Bechtel of Brick and Mortar who's pointed out that we've been building buildings for quite some time, and actually, the reason that I don't know, pick another industry automotive manufacturing is getting more and more efficient is that we've only been doing it for 100 years. We've been building amazing buildings for literally millennia. And so we're actually pretty good at it. That's one argument. But then the other argument is that you peel this back and you get to ask why a few times. And there are good reasons that the industry is conservative in adopting some things. And it's not, the very nature of the work where you move from project to project and every project is completely unique and you have to work with a completely new team. This isn't a static industry that wants to, stick in its ways. It's maybe the most dynamic industry in the world. And that took a little while to learn at Flux, but it convinced me that to help the industry move forward, you needed to meet the industry where it was in many respects. You couldn't, Flux basically said look, we got a bunch of really smart software engineers and we put them in a room and they're going to come up with a better way to do architecture and construction. And it didn't work, but going and spending time with practitioners, understanding, their challenges, understanding a little bit more about why some of the things that you look at and say, this isn't a good idea, this shouldn't be done this way. If you ask why a few times, you learn, sometimes there are good reasons. Yeah. And sometimes it's just that the technology is not built in the right way and you need to build something else to help them move forward. Yeah. So those are the big lessons we took away. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then when did the JOIN thing come up? Was it straight after Flux you said, you know what, this is what we're going to do? Or was there a timeline in there that you turned around and said, you know what, I could go into a startup, another kind of 3D printing, go down that line again? Or why pre-construction and why JOIN?
Yeah, great question. We maybe a little bit of ego, but I think I knew that I wanted to do my own thing coming out of Flux. We had seen just enough opportunity in the industry to believe that there was a chance to do something pretty special. So we got JOIN going pretty quickly, but we weren't doing the same pre-construction things. We initially started building a different flavor of design automation tools still for architects and engineers. And this was sort of natural for, we'd know BIM technology up and down and knew a bunch of the leading folks inside of computational design practices and all the leading firms and so forth. And so sort of a natural place to start. And we learned very quickly that it wasn't the place that we were going to meaningfully impact the industry. And so we had developed automation tools that let designers reason better about the product systems and materials that were going to actually be used to put the building together. And so you had earlier feedback on constructability, earlier feedback on cost. And we take it out and we start showing it to people and people are interested in starting to use it. And what we learned was that, the designer's office wasn't the place to really move the needle on project outcomes. And basically all the designers kept telling us, whispering in our ears, we like to think we're the people shaping the skyline, and it's nice to not have to draw quite so many things manually, but what's happening more and more is that the contractor is involved earlier and earlier. And instead of happening in a design review meeting, all of the most important decisions in a project are happening in the OAC meetings during the pre-construction phase. And, we heard that. It took us hearing that a few times to say, oh, that's interesting. But eventually we figured out how to listen to it and pulled on that thread. And what we developed a view of the world where pre-construction is just incredibly important in determining both will be delivered from a project, like what the actual building will be, what the piece of infrastructure will be, how well it will serve like the owner or society's needs, but then also the outcomes for all of the different firms and stakeholders involved. Like, are they able to do the job profitably? Do they have a good time doing it? Do they want to do it again? Do they get repeat business out of it? This sort of thing. And what we realized was that we had helped, design teams build designs for just the craziest buildings, like the most unique facades, every panel different, just these beautiful things, amazing choices about the sustainability and healthy use of materials, just all of this stuff at the design phase. And that's great, but it has to go through pre-construction because it's almost always designed right now without cost input.
Yeah.
Cost and design informs cost, and you have to coordinate the design and the budget somehow. Like maybe you can get the budget to be bigger, or you need to figure out how to fit the design in. And 10 years ago, this was all value engineering, but like teams are starting to move past this and engage earlier through design build or construction manager at risk delivery methodologies. And the result is this pre-construction phase where the design isn't quite finished, but it comes in and there's a team of people who understand cost and constructability. And it's whatever comes out of pre-construction that gets built.
Yeah.
And so your project is only as good as your pre-con phase.
Yeah.
And right now, that pre-construction phase is run through a spreadsheet. And it means that it doesn't matter what crazy BIM technologies you have. It doesn't matter like what design automation we provided. Without a change in the world, projects are only going to be as good as the pre-construction spreadsheet. And we thought that we could improve that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. And you're right. I mean, it's very difficult. I don't think I've ever heard of it where they increase the budget after design. I mean, it's generally going to get tightened up during pre-construction. But you got to remember as well, pre-construction within general contracting, even 10 years ago, wasn't an important department. I mean, it was number crunching, but not to an extent that number crunching. Pre-construction now is a fundamental place and where the biggest decisions are made. And that's what general contractors are realizing. And obviously that has evolved over the last 10 years. Now they need technology to complement that. Because, I mean, if you've listened to the podcast, everyone knows that I believe the future of construction is pre-construction. And then the future of pre-construction is talent and technology. So once you've got that kind of combination together, you've got a serious chance of building a bigger, better, safer world for everyone or a project. And it's interesting. It's interesting. JOIN. Give me this. Probably feeds in now to give us a kind of a layman's term explanation of what JOIN does and how it works.
Great. Yeah. So joins the decision-making platform for the built environment. A lot of what happens in pre-construction is decision-making. The construction and design teams need the owner to make, we've run the data on this. We actually track all these decisions, and so we know how many decisions are involved. Most projects, actually, regardless of size, it's between 1 and 2,000 owner-driven decisions that need to happen. And, it's not 10,000, but it's also not 100. It's 1 or 2,000. You can't do one a day. Like you need to make them pretty quick, and they're complicated and they touch many different scopes and they impact, the program and the design, and there's complicated technical concerns with each of them or with many of them, not with all of them. And a lot of what, you mentioned the talent in pre-construction, like the talented individuals in pre-construction need to guide the owner through all of these decisions, and they need to do it in a way where there's trust and confidence and transparency so that the relationship doesn't erode. Because it's easy for an owner or developer when they're being told that they can't have the champagne on their beer budget, to lose a little bit of trust or a little bit of faith that the rest of the team is acting on their behalf. And so JOIN solves that. It's a software platform. It's deployed, through the web browser. It's a cloud-hosted piece of software, and teams use it to assemble all of the information that guides those decisions. So right now, this is done in email, and it's copying and pasting things out of the VE log and into email and back and forth. And it's 60 hours of work in the 40-hour work week, and you haven't even started to analyze analyze that information. And then once it's in JOIN, there's simple, clear visualizations that allow the whole team to understand what's on the table, what decisions they need to make, and why they should make them. So teams use it to run their OAC meetings and guide owners to make decisions in a timely way, make decisions that they're bought into, and ideally make good decisions that'll move projects forward.
Brilliant. Just in case anybody doesn't know, OAC, what does that mean?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm that's the owner, architect, contractor team meeting.
Good. So I call it the three-legged stool on the podcast. So that is the meeting. So the three-legged stool, 100%. So it's basically collaboration, transparency within that. Now, how does the whole thing around pre-construction data, the data, is there different privileges, different permissions at each stage? I mean, or does everyone just have an open view of everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right. We think one of the things that's challenging about pre-construction is that you got to leverage all these different specialist people. You got sort of estimator or pre-construction manager talent, right? 10 years ago, that meant you were really good at estimating. Today, that means you're both really good at estimating and are able to guide the relationship and project manage and assemble and air traffic control other people's work during pre-construction. There's just so much more going on. It used to be pre-construction happened with 100% construction documentation, design set. And before any work had started, it was this very narrow period that was focused on turning around a number. And that was challenging enough. Now it goes on for much longer. Work might start at the beginning and the design might not be done till the end. So there's just a lot more going on. And so pre-construction, professionals, particularly general contractors, are being stretched in all sorts of new directions. A lot of what they have to assemble is specialist information, whether it's cost information or constructability insights or what have you, from different trade partners or different consultants or different engineers. And you need to be able to bring all of this together to show particularly the owner, but also the design team, a unified picture of where the project is. But you also don't really need the acoustic consultant in there messing around with the numbers for what you're expecting the steel to cost, right? Yeah. It's this tricky balance where you need to be able to get everything together, but you also need, and this is what we've had to build, robust controls for compartmentalizing this information, just so that everyone's confident that people are seeing what they should see and nothing more.
Brilliant. And of course, as well, I mean, there's seeing and getting access to different data and stuff. But I would imagine the owner, we're 75% of the world are visual people. So I would imagine the visual side is more towards the owner, and then the architect, obviously the designers, and then the contractor needs to get into the nitty gritty of the numbers and update it. And then that updates through the visual. You know what I would love? And like every podcast that we jump on, this is not prepped. There's no preparation, but I would love if you could visually show us but we might do that again, Andrew, and then put it into this podcast, because that would be pretty cool. Just seeing the product in action. Because obviously, I know I am. I'm an engineer, but I'm not a pre-construction engineer and estimator, but I would love to just see it visually. So that sounds really good. Initially, you said you started a product. How has it evolved? How has it pivoted over the last 3 or 4 years since you started? And where do you see the biggest value add coming from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start at the end and then maybe talk about how we got there. The biggest value adds we see are around improving the experience of teams that are running these pre-construction processes, and that's both. if these estimators and pre-construction managers are doing 60 hours of work just assembling the information before they've made any decisions or they've added any value on top of it, like they're probably working 70, 80-hour weeks. I mean, these people are working hard. The decisions they're making they're the ones that set up their entire firm for profitability. If they screw up, everyone they work with gets laid off. Like it's this really high pressure situation. And, a lot of it hinges on, like Excel formulas being right. And so we got all these stories from folks, like it's Sunday afternoon, they're at the baseball game, and like something starts scratching the back of their head and they say like, no, I'm done. It's only inning 2, but like I'm headed back to the office to make sure this is all right. And they need to, like, just the other day we were onboarding a new client and like brought in, an estimate. They had a project that was in process. They wanted to move it to JOIN because they were adopting JOIN, and they brought it in, and we found a discrepancy in the numbers, the total cost for the project between like what it was in JOIN and what it was like in their spreadsheet they were running. And like, obviously we were worried that there was a bug or we hadn't brought something in. And what it turned out was there was a formula that was wrong in the spreadsheet, and the formula was wrong by to the tune of $3 million. Right? That can make or break a project. I mean, it's a pretty big project.
Make or break a project. It could make or break a company.
Yeah. And these folks get through this, right? Like pre-construction happens and they're smart, dedicated professionals, but it's hard. And so one of the big value adds is just like improving the day-to-day life of everyone on the team. The other is improving the day-to-day life and relationships with all the other stakeholders, particularly the owner. So the owner can rest assured, got a better understanding of what's going on. They're able to see it's just like a better experience. Like it sounds funny, right? Like it's construction and we're talking about bringing buildings out. But like when we talk to, some of our repeat customers who have worked with us for a long time, like they talk about emotion a lot. And, you're in the 3-legged stool. You got the owner, the architect, the contractor. Like with traditional delivery methods, design, bid, build methodologies, like it's this, have you seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? That standoff at the end where like it's these 3 people with a gun and like someone's going to get shot, right? Like in those not with the pre-construction way of building, like it's this, each person has 2 guns and they pointed one at each of the other like stakeholders. And it's this awful contentious thing. And the owner is unhappy because their project's late and over budget. And the architect is unhappy because this amazing thing they designed has been value engineered without any sense by the general contractor. And the general contractor is unhappy because the architect gave them something that they can't build. And the owner doesn't know what they want. And they've got to deal with all the trades to begin with. And it's awful. And the promise of pre-construction is that with the right contractual incentives and early involvement, you don't have to work that way.
Yeah.
But not every team has completely adjusted. And so we join by making it easier to offer a little transparency. Obviously, you control it. You don't share stuff you don't need to or that you shouldn't. But offering the right amount of transparency, it's almost an olive branch. And the motion changes. Like you don't have to go into every one of these meetings like pulling your guns out of the holster. And
it's a brilliant analogy. And I heard it on another podcast. The guy said, as an estimator, all you got to do is every meeting you got to shoot your way out of a meeting. That's simply the way an estimator goes into a meeting, knowing that he's going to be attacked from all ends. He almost can't win.
And it's not like his or her fault, right? It's like, it's the truth of the market. It's that you want champagne and you have a beer budget, like a lot of the time. You got to shoot 100%. Your way out. That's a great analogy for it.
And it's a thankless task as well. I mean, you can't win if you're high and or if you're low, you've missed something. If you're high, you don't win the bid. It's near on impossible. And it's interesting to know about the 3-legged stool and the collaboration and the openness and the transparency. I think it's so important. From everyone. When it comes to pre-construction data, historical data for companies that are building the same warehouse in multiple places all over the US, and obviously there's going to be different circumstances and variables and weather conditions of that. What's JOIN's kind of pre-construction data, historical data? What's the focus there for them?
Yeah, great question. We right now are not doing a huge amount in closing the loop from historical estimation data. we see a big opportunity in helping close the loop with historical as-builts. There are dedicated estimation systems out there. Sage, WinEst, Beck, ProEst, Stack, right? Whole list. And JOIN doesn't replace any of those. And we integrate with a number of them. I'm going to be on a podcast hopefully in a month with someone from Beck. We've great relationship. And a lot of those tools have developed fantastic functionality for managing historical estimates. And we don't need it. Yeah. That's not the value that JOIN's going to bring to the market. And so our attitude there is really to integrate on historical estimates, right. And integrate it with other cost data streams where, in design bid build methodology, you had these like isolated periods of time where you develop new estimates. And the first one was conceptual. Maybe it was based on historical numbers. Maybe it was just based on a swag. Develop the GC detailed estimate, and then you go out to the trade, you get numbers from them, and then you bid the project out, and then you start actually building it, right? And with this, the blurring of project phases that comes with these pre-construction led projects, like it's all over the place. Like you started building the foundation, and the owner put their arm up and said, like, hey, what if we put a pool on top of the building? And so that's a conceptual number, and you got some stuff that the GC's price, and some stuff that the trade's price, and some stuff that's bid, and some stuff that's work in place. And like it's this continuously evolving picture that you need to give a continuous and real time like view into. And so we think there's a number of different cost sources that can help inform decision making in that environment. One of the really important ones is historical estimates. Like a lot of work went into figuring out what a given component of a building costs in a given city at a given time. You can escalate that. You can bring it forward. That gives you some piece of insight into what things will cost. And we're excited to integrate there. We're also excited to help firms bring forward historical as-builts, so that you're pricing based on what it actually cost at the end of the previous project, not what you thought it would cost at the beginning.
Brilliant. Love it. And then JOIN in the next 5 years, what does it look like? What's the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to bringing to market? What gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, that's a good question. Coffee gets me up in the morning. One of the things that we're really excited about is the opportunity to start to offer insights back into this decision-making process. Pre-construction, right now is run through spreadsheets by smart people. And the spreadsheet hopefully is built pretty well and there aren't formula errors, but it starts blank. And you're able to fill it in with what your pre-construction team, your owner, your architect, your general contractor, your trade partners, if they're involved, like already know, or what you have time to research, like what the opportunities are, what the different material systems. I mean, there's new material systems coming online like every week. It feels like it's like there's crazy opportunities out there. Looking at, there's all these opportunities for like offsite production that are coming into play. Like, and it's not. It's a way more complicated question than like, do we cut the building up into boxes? Or it's like, no, we're not talking about that. It's like, do we do bathroom pods? Or do we do just the vanities? Or like, can we combine like MEP trades into racks that get like built off site and put in much quicker? Like there's all these things that have to be considered early. And in a spreadsheet, it's hard, but in an application, it's structured data. And so we've got this opportunity to help close the loop again and
Brilliant.
Start from a better place than an empty spreadsheet.
Yeah. And not only does it make pre-construction and estimating lives even better, it makes the QA QC guy life better, the safety guy, the project manager, the superintendent, the trades. It really does make everyone's life a lot better when there's full transparency and everyone knows exactly what is happening, but also that every variable had been thought about at the beginning and has been plugged in. Yeah.
And pre-construction staff they're at the core of it. The talent that does this is like, the eye of the needle that everything has to pass through.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, that's my game. We're the only pre-construction estimating talent firm in the US, but GCs are now coming to the realization of that. I mean, we get weekly calls with GCs saying, can you work with us? Can you find these people? And when you get them in and they build strong teams, and literally And I'm not talking about the E&R top 10 or an E&R top 20. I'm talking about small, mid-sized, large companies. Once they get the pre-construction, you can see the companies that are successful because they have the strongest pre-construction teams and they've integrated technology to expedite and help the teams as well. And they're absolutely killing it. And I was going to ask you as well, Andrew, 2020, obviously the construction the whole world was hit by COVID. How did you guys adapt, and how did you use that year? Because a lot of general contractors had a lot of time on their hands that they normally wouldn't have.
Yeah, it's a good question. So right when COVID hit, it was a little bit bumpy for us for about 2 months. But what became pretty quick after that was that the market was not collapsing, but it was tightening. And this meant that a lot of our customers and a lot of our prospects had a lot more emphasis in their day-to-day lives on winning work. And in the old days, you want to work with that bid. That was it. Where's the number? Is it? You don't want to be the low one. You don't want to be the high one. You want to be the right number to win the job. Hard bid
was the most popular method. Yeah. And it's probably the least most popular one now.
For good reason. Yeah. I mean, folks are still doing hard bid and delivering good projects that way, but 80%. I mean, the DBIA just released another study looking at usage of design build and construction manager at risk, or CMGC delivery methods, and it's 80% of the market. And in those methodologies, you don't win just with a number. You win by convincing people that you've got the expertise and the skills to get through pre-construction and then deliver on that project. And JOIN is a very visual and highly effective tool for communicating that expertise. And so the big thing that came out of 2020 was that we found that our customers were winning work with JOIN, that they were pulling us into their pursuit process, presenting with JOIN, and convincing owners that they were the right partner for the job, in part because of what they were able to demonstrate through JOIN. It's not that JOIN's the answer, it's that JOIN helps the team articulate their value to owners, but it does so apparently quite effectively. And yeah, we're happy to be a part of our customers' success that way. Wonderful.
And I just want to go back. I probably should have done this at the start, but you know yourself, it's we pivot on this podcast. Talk to me now about the four founders. So Jim, Drew, Ian, yourself. How was that put together? How do you complement each other? How do you? Why did you go with four founders?
Yeah, well, people came on one. I mean, it's sometimes hard to decide who's a co-founder at a company and who isn't. So I think actually the right answer is the 6 people that were on the team when we raised our first sort of substantial round of equity. And we had Drew and I were both software engineers. We knew each other from Flux. E was a 3D printing software engineer. So three software engineers came together. Jim Forrester, totally different. I mean, he's written a bunch of code in his time, but he's currently got a business development title at JOIN. And previously he was a co-founder at Newforma, which had just exited to Battery Ventures. And as Jim put it to me yesterday, he's not really someone to work a corporate job for too long. He wanted to get back into it. And Jim brought a lot of experience in positioning the business and in being patient and finding these threads of opportunity that other people hadn't tracked. And so Jim started as a informal advisor who was spending time with us. And then we were like, Jim, what if we knew we could get a day a week of your time? No. Before that was okay, a formal advisor. And so we would get a day a month or something like that, guaranteed. And it was always way more than this. Then it was a day a week as a part-time employee to do one thing with us. And then we
and he gets sucked in.
Yeah. And then 2 other early members to call out, actually. Dan Anthony joined as a software engineer. Dan Anthony was a computational designer at MBBJ previously, and he had trained as an architect, had a stamp, and had learned to code, and loves the industry and loves the built environment, but wanted to have more of an impact than was possible inside of any one particular firm. So he joined very early, and then last sort of member of the founding crew, if you will, was Christina Landry, who's joins head of product. And we met her. Do you know SCS, the Society for Construction Solutions?
Yeah.
We met her randomly at one of these meetings where she had trained as an architect out on the West Coast and had graduated in 2000. 2008, 2009, something like that. Great time to try to get a first job as an architect, right? I mean, she's just fantastically talented, and like sent out 100 applications and got one interview and no jobs. And so, she went into technology. And so she had to run as a product manager lead at two startups, I think, in New York. One sort of funnily, like she couldn't do architecture because of the financial crisis, but she ended up being head of product at a company that was responding to some of the credit securities legislation that came out of the financial crisis. And so built a huge team there, very successful run. And at some point she decided she wanted to get back to the built environment. And so started looking for early companies in that space to join. And we are very excited that she chose us.
Glad to have her. Yeah.
And so it's always been this mixture. The team's always been this mixture of practitioners and technologists. So we got probably half the team, maybe 2/3 of the team has come from industry in some way. They're not always leveraging those skills now. Our director of customer education, Gustav, is like a 10-year estimator at WebCore, like teaches estimating, like super experienced, definitely leveraging his industry experience. But other folks, it's the language, it's the perspective, it's the love for the industry that they bring to the table. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love it. And then just kind of coming towards the end now, Andrew, what is your target audience? Like if someone's listening to this now, they're a mid-level GC, do 500 million a year, thinking about pre-con technology, is that your target, or are you, can you serve us all?
Yeah. We don't serve everyone, but we serve basically every project type, and we serve companies around the country. We've gotten it's funny, we've been a little too busy to update the set of logos on our website, but $500 million a year GC who does a design build, a construction manager at risk work, and wants to advance their pre-construction practice and deliver the best tools for the talent teams that they've assembled. They will be in good company if they came and talked to join.
Brilliant. Love it. And the best, I'll tell you what, we'll do that at the very end. I was going to say contact information and stuff, but I will put it all down the bottom. I'm going to go all to Tim Ferriss on you now. What is the big thing that in your like work week and your daily routine, whatever it is, that has kind of given you the platform for success, has helped you along the way, the big change? If someone was sitting out there going, you know what, I want to start. We actually had 2 guys on recently. They'll be coming out, being published the same time as this. 2 guys started their own GC down in Texas, and fascinating guys. And I'm always fascinated by what makes you kind of jump to the entrepreneurial and what helps you, because it's a tough, stressful space. We know pre-construction estimating is stressful, but being an entrepreneur is stressful and lonely.
Yeah. I think what let me do it is, like super frankly, it was okay. It's always been okay if it didn't work out. I've got, I'm married. My wife has a job. I didn't have a kid when it started. That probably would have made it a little bit harder to get started. But
that's more pressure.
Yeah, no, we had them along the way. That was a big, enabler. Just sort of a like it was okay. Like it wasn't. I didn't. My ego isn't going to be damaged if it doesn't work out for some reason. Like, we obviously have big ambitions and big hopes and big expectations, but having other things in your life that matter more, I think, makes it easier to step back at certain times and relax about certain decisions. Because there's a lot of stuff where if you're tied up in a knot, can't sleep at night, it's going to be harder. Decisions, it's going to be harder. But on a week to week basis, I've gotten really relentless about trying to exercise every day. That's been. So stuff gets, it's funny. It used to be everything that needs to get done, it's not exercise gets done. And then exercise happens. Exercise is going to happen. And if other stuff doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, because you got to get up the next day. Exactly.
If you're healthy and you're making good decisions, everything else will fall into place. And if you're not strong, you're not physically or mentally strong, then there's no chance of that happening.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And what is the go-to exercise? Are you a runner? Or are you
I was weightlifter? A runner. I'm now a weightlifter, although you probably can't tell because I'm not a particularly good one, but I do enjoy it. Yeah.
It's a challenge. Yeah. It's, what are you deadlifting?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I got a squat rack for
right. Well, let's hear it. This is called accountability. We're going to see where you're at now, and then we're going to call you in 12 months to see where you've improved to.
Yeah. I think my deadlift PR is 305. Wow. I don't think I'm there yet. I think the other one, it's always the bench press. I think my PR there is 200. I think I could beat that right now, but wow. Yeah,
you're obviously at it for a while because you don't get up to those numbers without practicing.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, listen, Andrew, this has been fascinating. Love hearing about JOIN. Love where you guys are at. 4 years in, obviously killing it and smashing it. Going to follow your journey. We're going to get you on again, hopefully in the next 12 months to see where you're at. To contact you, if there's any general contractors, owners out there that want to find out more about JOIN, what's the best email address? Maybe LinkedIn. Where do they find you?
Yeah, great. I'm on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me at andrew@join.build, would love to be in touch and see if there's a way that we can help your teams out.
Wonderful, Andrew. Thanks for your time today, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.